Kalyn here with another Paper Smooches tutorial video for you. Today I'm going to be using the Love Struck stamp set, and I'm going to be using some watercolor paints as well. I got this set off of Amazon. It was I think like $8 and it works really well. So I will link that below so that if you are interested you can go get that. So I'm starting out by scoring a piece of cardstock, just as usual at the 4 1/4 mark using my score buddy. And then I'm just going to fold it and use my bone folder to just get an extra crisp edge. Now that that's done, I'm going to stamp my sentiment, and I'm going to be using the Love Struck sentiment from this stamp set. Now I'm going to be taking my Tim Holtz Distress ink in Walnut Stain and ink up my stamp with that. This is my absolutely favorite, like dark brown colored ink. It's just my go-to. I like it a lot instead of black just because it's a little bit less harsh, but it still obviously stands out and gives the contrast you need if you want to read your sentiment clearly. So now I'm going to be taking the target image from the set and stamping that. And the little heart inside of that target image is included. It's attached to it. So you'll see me inking it up with some Hawaiian Shores ink from Paper Tray ink. But then later I'm going to be changing the color of that heart in the middle by using some die cuts. So now I'm going to be using the Love and Cherish die set from Paper Smooches and taking one of those hearts and some red cardstock and just adhering that to the center of that target image just to give it a little more interest. So now I'm going to be taking the 4 arrows from the Love Struck set and going to be creating my entire background using those. So I'm going to just alternate the different arrows and then using a bunch of different ink colors. So the first one I'm using is Pale Tomato, and that's one of the Hero Arts shadow inks. Now taking the next arrow that I'm using, and I'm going to use some Harvest Gold ink from Paper Tray ink. Now taking the next arrow stamp, this one's my favorite I think of the 4, and I'm going to be using some soft apricot ink from Hero Arts. I wanted to do kind of, some warm tone colors, but then also have that pop of that teal in there. So I just kind of arranged the arrows in sort of a staggered position. I really just sort of went with my gut and just sort of put them wherever I thought looked good. So now taking that last arrow, and I'm going to be using some red ink from Hero Arts in Red Royal. And last but not least, that final arrow, I'm using Hawaiian Shores ink from Paper Tray again. So now you'll see me just adding stamps to the rest of the card background, alternating between the different arrows and then the different ink colors that I chose. all finished with stamping those images comes the fun part, is watercoloring over top of them. So I used just a regular old paintbrush and some water, and not a lot of ink runs just by adding water to them. So what I like to do if I want that watercolored effect is I stamp them first and then I just add some watercolor over top. So I mixed some red and pink on the watercolor palette there to get a color that I thought matched that pale tomato color really well. And so you'll see I'm just kind of going over that, and just adds a nice little watercolor background to the arrow image, and doesn't necessarily make it look as if it's watercolored, but it just gives a really nice artsy looking background to it. So I'm going to be doing that with each color of ink that I chose for each arrow. So you'll see next I am mixing some yellow and a little bit of that darker yellow to get that perfect harvest gold color to match that ink. And I just do a lot of mixing, a lot of blending, and then just kind of roughly go over top of them and paint. So there you have it, the completed card. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check out Paper Smooches so you can get your hands on these stamps and the dies that I used.